that. I'm just checking.
We're glad you're back, Sue.
I just realised there was some in the room. So.
Okay,
and we are now live.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll commence the proceedings, and Penny, as our CEO, would you please introduce us with our karakia?
Whakataka ki te uru, whakataka ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Kia hiaki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei mauri ora.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny, for opening with our karakia. Can I just acknowledge mana whenua of the rohi that we are considering. We acknowledge iwi and hapu of the land, including Ngāti Kahununu ki Hiratonga, Ngāti Kahununu ki te whanganui a Orotu, and ngā hapu mina marae o te konahira arohi o Hiratonga. We acknowledge that we are entering your space today, and albeit virtually, we are here for very important reasons, to hear that which is important in your district and across Arohi in relation to the purest principles of representation and democracy. It would be appropriate that with this modest introduction you may respond, and then we'll go into introducing the commissioners.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, tēnā koe Brendan, tēnā hoki koe Penny, nā hau te karakia I tukuna atu I te ata nei, hei whakapai, hei arahi anō I tēnei hui o tātou, nō reira ka nui te mihi kia koe o te rā kia koutou, te komihana, aha ko kei wāhi kia koutou I tēnei wā tonu, kei konei mātou I here taunga, nei te mihi maoha kia koutou katoa, ko Brendan, Jamie, Sue, me te tīma hoki ki tō taha Penny, Linda, Donald, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Anei ahau e tū nei mao ko mahaki, hei māngai mō ngā hapu kārangaranga o here taunga, e tukuna atu ngā mihi kia koutou. Kia tātou hoki tō tātou koromatua Sandra, kia koe hoki Tania, kei wāhi kia koe I tēnei wā tonu, tō tātou tumu whakarai, tō Savili Nigel Bickle, me tātou ngā kaimahi o te kaunihira arohi o here taunga. Kei te mihi hoki tēnei I raro anō I ngā āhuatanga o te wā, me ngā mate kei wāganu a koutou, o ngā wiki, ngā marama kua hipa atu, me ngā mate o te kāinga nei o here taunga, me rātou anō e takoto ana ki ngā marae, e rua I tēnei wā tonu, I tēnei rā, no reira rātou kia rātou ngā mate, hua anō anei tātou, ngā kanuhi ora e hiko tonu nei I te mato o te whenua, kia anga whakamua. Nō reira, koe nei tāku I tēnei wā, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Kia ora, James.
Just bear with me for a minute. Kia ora, James, and thank you very much for your acknowledgement. Just bear with the screen is choosing to challenge me. Right, so the next part of the proceedings I think should be that we introduce ourselves, and if we can start off with the commissioners first. So Commissioner Piper.
E te Marie, kia ora, I'm Sue Piper. I know the district quite well. I've got my mum and her mum are all in the Havelock North Cemetery. And I've been hanging around in local government for at least 30 years. I was involved in another capacity, for example, with the 89 reorganisation. So there you go. So I'm looking forward to an interesting day. Cheers.
Cheers, Commissioner Piper. Commissioner Anea? Just just mute yourself. We quite like it when you are muted, but it might be useful to hear you today.
Luckily, he hasn't got control of the mute button. Otherwise, he'd have it and be on it all the time. Kia ora, everyone. It's lovely to be with you today. And thank you so much for having us in your space. And many of you will know that I've been in local government and as Mayor of the Timaru District for 9 years on council, and I've had the honour to be 7 years on the Local Government Commission. So really looking forward to today and looking forward to hearing all your arguments for and against. And we've got the unenviable job, of course, of making the decision, but thank you.
And kia ora, my name's Brendan Duffy. I'm a former mayor of the Horowhenua district for 12 years and in an additional 9 years on the council, bit of time on national council and a few other bits and pieces. So look, we're here as commissioners for all those reasons that have already been articulated. We're supported today by 3 of the team from the office. So you've already met Penny in terms of opening us with our karakia, our chief executive. You can see Linda on screen, our senior advisor. And I think for a number of you, you'll recognise Donald, our principal advisor, who I think we all understand has been here forever, longer than Piper, which is quite important in local government. But Donald, as you know, has got a long-standing involvement and a great depth of knowledge, which is important when it comes to advising the commissioners on the decisions that we have to make. So look, the proceedings are the process is pretty simple. We've done our introductions. We'll pass now, from our side, we've done our introductions. We'll pass now to you, Mayor Sandra, for your introductions, and then please just proceed straight into your presentation. Once your presentation is finished, we might have some questions that will need to be considered when it comes to your right of reply. We'll then go into hearing from those people who have chosen to speak. During their presentations or when they're finished, we'll want to ask questions. Some of those questions we might want to have responded to again in your right of reply, and we'll keep a record of those. And then we'll see where we land from there. So that's kind of like the process that we follow. So I'll hand back to you, Ms. Sandra.
Nā koutou katoa. I nā rangatira, Brendan, Janie and Sue, advisors and team. Kia ora koutou. Well, I'd just like to introduce our team to you first. As our Māori advisor, Dr. James Graham has just said in our mihi whakatau, Councillor and Deputy Mayor Tania Kua, Chief Executive Nigel Bickle, our Principal Advisor Ross McLeod, and Craig Cameron, who is also an advisor to in our lead team, and Vicky, who is our administrator for today. So kia ora koutou katoa. While we'd love to be hosting you in person, sadly in these times we are virtual, and but at the same time it is great for us, and it gives me a huge pleasure on behalf of our council to be able to present their views in support of our final representation proposal that we arrived at. First of all, our introduction. So determining our final representation proposal has not been an easy task. The exciting introduction of Māori wards represents a huge positive step forward for Hastings, Here Taonga. However, it has presented us with some challenging representation mathematics across our communities of interest and our existing and very successful ward structure. This morning, I want to talk about the proposal we arrived at and the journey we took to get there. I particularly want to cover off the key aspects of rationale of our proposal. I will touch on the community diversity across our district and the vital role that communities of interest and ward representation play in providing effective representation. I will comment briefly on the significant decision to introduce Māori wards and outline the impact this had on our current representation. I will outline the issues and options we considered and the process we undertook. I will touch briefly on the representation mathematics we were confronted with to arrive at our initial proposal. And I will summarise the rationale behind our proposal. I wish to outline the issues raised by the appellants and considered by Council in response to their submissions. Effective representation for the communities of Hastings District. Urbis Erurus Concordia, town and country in harmony. That is the inscription on our coat of arms for the Hastings District Council. In Hastings, that inscription is not an abstract idea or a depiction of history. It is who we are. And it is embraced every day by our local community and our economy. Put simply, our geographically spread across rural and plains areas, and our communities grow some of the best produce, beef, lamb, fruit, vegetables, grapes, and plantation forests in the world. While our urban communities process that produce and provide support and services to businesses and communities engage in that production and in that processing. Why we are also the home to a number of other innovative businesses, agricultural and horticulture activity, processing and support services, which form the backbone of our economy and our community. Our rural, plains and urban communities work very well together. However, our large, sparsely populated rural areas, our fertile soils, villages and marae communities of the Heritonga Plains, and our comparatively densely populated urban areas are our distinct communities of interest with their own particular needs, which include our widely spread rural communities stretching from Waimarama to Haroto and Potorino to Onipo. Our fertile growing areas, the villages and marae communities of the Heritonga Plains, our commercial and residential centres of Hastings and Havelock North, and our young, diverse, growing and very vibrant Flaxmere village and community. Of particular note is the large land area of the rural area of the district. It takes around 2 hours to drive from one end of the district to the other before taking account of the country roads where many of our community live. This is 5,000 square kilometres. This geography has informed the retention of 2 rural wards and 2 councillors who serve the representation needs of the rural community. And I acknowledge Councillor Kerr as one of those councillors. We know from the experience that for our council to work best, the needs of these diverse communities of interest need to be recognised, and that each of these communities of interest needs an effective voice around the council table. The rural revolt of the early 1990s showed us the negative reaction that can occur when communities feel unheard. A key step taken to address the concerns of the rural community was the introduction of a rural community board. The board examines and makes recommendations on rural expenditure priorities. The council also put in place separate rating areas. Coupled with the retention of rural wards, these steps have shown how effective representation and council responsiveness can address community concerns and build enduring governance and give good representation. I note that the Rural Community Board continues to this day to provide very wise governance on behalf of the rural community. Our council has learned from this experience that our distinct communities of interest and our ward representation model is critical to enabling the diversity in our community to be represented effectively. Hastings District Ward Representation Model, together with its Rural Community Board, has served our district well since the mid-1990s. The model has evolved during that time. It has remained firmly based on a clear communities of interest that still exist. The model is very well accepted in the community and in council. The introduction of Māori wards. The decision in 2021 to introduce Māori wards to the 2022 elections was a wonderfully positive step forward for our council and our community. It guaranteed Māori representation around the council table and enables us to strengthen the effective representation of our communities. However, the introduction of a separate Māori electoral population had significant and uneven impacts across the existing ward structure. You will have noted this from your review of council reports and discussion documents. I note that we moved from a situation where our logical and well-accepted ward structure readily complied with the plus or minus 10% requirement to a position where compliance was impossible without a significant change to the ward structure. To illustrate the Māori wards not being introduced, the electoral population for the Flaxmere ward would have been 12,180. With the introduction of the Māori ward, the Flaxmere ward electoral population drops to 6,830, a reduction of just on 44%. In contrast, the Hastings Havelock North ward sees a reduction in its electoral population to 14.5%, while the Mohaka ward loses an estimated 530 persons, reducing by only 8.4%. These uneven impacts make for a challenging set of representation mathematics. Our process, the issues, and our options. Despite the short time frame for the representation review brought about by the introduction of Māori wards, the council undertook a thorough and very rigorous review with our community. The council held 4 workshop sessions, considered 2 discussion documents, undertook a pre-proposal community engagement process, and specifically engaged with the Māori community, the Rural Community Board, and our iwi partners, the youth advisory bodies, prior to adopting an initial proposal. Staff and advisors carried out an updated assessment of communities of interest, a matter that featured in council workshop discussions. One of the council workshop sessions focused particularly on possible boundary and mesh block adjustments to balance effective and fair representation. Through this process, the council arrived at 3 options to consider. These were discussed at the second discussion document and in a council report on the 26th of August 2021. The council then followed the statutory process, carefully considering and debating the options and possible variations to arrive at an initial proposal. We spent a full day hearing, considering, and debating submissions on the proposal. Having done this, the council opted to a clear majority to confirm the initial proposal. The meeting minutes set out in the decision made and the response to the submissions. However, it also resolved to further explore areas raised during the submission process, including the establishment of a Flaxmere committee, with the potential for members from the Flaxmere community and a process for considering future changes to ward names. The discussion documents and agenda reports previously provided to you set out the extensive range of issues considered by council throughout the review process. I highlight a number of the key issues we gave consideration to. A, the communities of interest within the Hastings district. B, the best ward structure for achieving effective representation for the communities of interest within the district. And C, potential adjustments to the ward structure and boundaries to help achieve fair or fairer representation for electors across the ward structure, and or to aid effective representation of communities of interest. D, the optimal structure for Māori wards within the district, including the views expressed from within the Māori community. E, the potential options for addressing underrepresentation in the Flaxmere General Ward. F, the best overall size of the council in terms of achieving effective and fair representation, but also in terms of a very effective governance body. Representation mathematics. I noted earlier that the introduction of Māori wards made for some challenging representation mathematics. It has proved impossible using the current ward structure or the modified version to find an average general population per councillor that provides for a set of representation arrangements that complies with a plus or minus 10%. If 14 councillors were to be elected from 5 general wards with the additional 3 Māori ward councillors, meaning 17 councillors plus the mayor in total, the average population per councillor across the general wards would be 5,114. Flaxmere ward with an average population per councillor of 3,440 would be well outside the plus or minus 10% rule and significantly overrepresented, minus 32.73%. The Mohaka ward would be underrepresented at plus 16.15%. With 12 councillors from general wards, which is the final proposal, the average population per councillor is 5,968, meaning Flaxmere ward with 1 councillor is underrepresented and the Heretaunga ward is slightly overrepresented. With 11 councillors from general wards, which is option B, considered by council, the average population per councillor is 6,510. Flaxmere is compliant, but Heretaunga is overrepresented by a greater margin, and Kahuranaki is also substantially overrepresented. Mohaka ward is slightly overrepresented, and Hastings Havelock slightly underrepresented, both under 11% variations. As I have noted, the current ward structure is highly valued in our community. I noted that it was possible to arrive at a mathematically compliant option with 10 councillors from general wards and 2 from Māori wards. Option C considered by council. However, this option merged the rural and Heretaunga wards into a single ward, reducing effective representation, and reduced the level of Māori ward representation to 2 councillors. It faced significant opposition from the rural community and the Māori community, and would likely have faced opposition from the Heretaunga Plains communities. We were not able to address the main occurrences of under or overrepresentation by adjusting the ward structure via boundary adjustments, while still providing for effective representation of communities of interest. Such attempts meant dividing communities with shared commonalities of interest or uniting communities with few shared commonalities of interest. Our rationale. The council's approach and rationale in determining the initial proposal was logical and reasoned. As part of our approach, we agreed that the communities of interest previously identified still exist in the district. We also agreed that the existing ward structure provided effective representation for those communities of interest, particularly given the large geographical spread of the rural area. We agreed that the Rural Community Board provided valuable additional representation and decision-making for our rural communities and for council, and should remain in place. We agreed after hearing from our Māori communities that we wish to put in place a council size that would provide for 3 Māori ward councillors. We also agreed on the same basis that there should be 1 Māori ward representing the Māori electoral population across the whole district. We looked at the council size overall and determined that a council with a mayor and 15 councillors provided the best balance between effective representation of communities of interest and fair representation of electors while retaining the same ward structure. An option with a mayor and 14 councillors was considered. But while Flaxmere ward fell within the plus or minus 10% rule, no other wards did. We also noted that the council had operated successfully with 15 councillors between 2001 and 2007. We looked at boundary adjustments that might address or improve fair representation of electors and or the effective representation of communities of interest. While we made some boundary adjustments uniting communities sharing commonalities of interest, such as those on the urban edge of Ngātaroa Triangle, or trying to balance the average electoral populations per councillor, we found ourselves unable to fully address departures from plus or minus 10% rule. Addressing underrepresentation for the Flaxmere ward would have meant either merging the ward with another ward or shifting large areas of population into Flaxmere ward or away from it. This would have resulted in combining communities with few commonalities of interest. For example, merging the Flaxmere ward with the Heritonga ward, or moving part of the Flaxmere ward into the Heritonga ward, or moving part of the Hastings, Havelock North or Heritonga wards into the Flaxmere ward. 2, separating the communities with strong commonalities of interest. For example, moving part of the Flaxmere ward into another ward, thereby separating it from the rest of the Flaxmere ward, or removing a distinct representative voice for Flaxmere. For example, merging Flaxmere with either Hastings, Havelock or the Heritonga wards. An alternative approach to retaining 2 councillors for the Flaxmere ward would have created a very significant overrepresentation of over 30%, which the council could not justify. None of these options was considered appropriate or justifiable. Flaxmere is a young, distinct, and ethnically diverse community which is receiving much needed council and government investment. Council considers it needs its distinct voice. In the end, we reached the view that a small underrepresentation for Flaxmere ward with a distinct representation was preferable to the alternative outcomes. This view was supported by the fact that Flaxmere will also have 3 Takitumu ward councillors working to represent its interests. While some submitters dismiss the idea of the 3 Māori ward councillors providing representation to Flaxmere, it is logical that Māori ward councillors will be incentivised to work hard to represent Flaxmere. The Māori electoral population for Flaxmere will make up 1/3 of the total electoral population for the Takitimu ward, a major concentration of voters within the ward. 2, the Māori ward councillors will work hard to appeal to the Flaxmere community and represent their interests at the governance level within council. To say they will not be akin to saying a New Zealand government would disregard the interests of Auckland when the city makes up 1/3 of the country's population. We considered very closely the idea of a separate Pāharakeke Māori ward as a way to enhancing specific representation for Flaxmere. The idea seemed like a simple, easy way of retaining 2 councillors representing Flaxmere. However, we had to have regard for the views of our Māori community. 1, our Māori community told us via huia iwi and submissions that a single ward to be known as Takitimu, covering the whole of the Hastings district, was their strong preference for effective Māori representation. 2, our Māori community asked us not to sacrifice Māori aspiration and effective representation to solve a mathematical problem in the general electoral ward structure. Our Māori community celebrated the council's decision to introduce Māori wards as a long overdue invitation for Māori to join the decision-making table, but asked us not to backtrack on this progress by immediately ignoring the wishes of Māori and making Māori representation interests subservient to those of the non-Māori community. These views turned us away from a separate Māori ward for Flaxmere. The council also considered a further community boards, including one for Flaxmere, but decided that these were not required for effective representation. The council opted to explore other options for effective voice for Flaxmere, including a committee of council, and this work is currently underway. After considering and making decisions on all of these matters, we arrived at our initial proposal, appeal and submission issues. I want to talk for a few moments about the issues raised by 2 appellants, as well as during the submission phase. Firstly, I want to acknowledge and thank the appellants and submitters for their civic engagement, passion, and effort in making submissions and appeals. While Council may not agree with many points that have been made, that is not to detract from the time and effort expended by the appellants and submitters in making a contribution to the representation process. The principal issues raised by the appellants are A, underrepresentation of a FLEXME award, B, non-compliance with the plus or minus 10% requirement, C, seeking a lesser number of councillors as a means to increasing individual councillor remuneration, thereby removing perceived barriers to participation in local government. I have addressed the first of these issues earlier, but I will briefly comment further. FLEXME ward underrepresentation. Regarding the underrepresentation of FLEXME award, the council acknowledges there are options available to address this. However, opting for a council of a mayor and 14 councillors would address the issue mathematically, but would make every other ward non-compliant and still leave FLEXME ward with one councillor. We have to ask if one councillor would have difficulty effectively representing the community among the mayor and 14 council colleagues. What practical difference would a reduction to the mayor and 13 councillor colleagues make? And two, shifting ward boundaries could also address the underrepresentation issue mathematically, but would result in either separating the FLEXME community that shares commonalities of interest or combining the FLEXME community of interest, other areas of the district with few commonalities of interest. The council believes these circumstances support a departure from the plus or minus 10% requirements on the grounds set out in section 19V3 of the Local Government Act. Other option is to amalgamate the FLEXME ward with either the Heretaunga or Hastings Havelock North wards. However, this would remove the distinct representative voice for the FLEXME ward and combines the FLEXME community with other communities with which it is likely to share few commonalities of interest. Again, this seems to contribute to the circumstances that justify departing from plus or minus 10% requirement on the grounds set out in section 19V3 of the Local Government Act. The appellants and submitters were accurate in highlighting the issue of underrepresentation in FLEXME, but less helpful in failing to recommend a solution that complies with the plus or minus 10% rule, while still providing for effective representation of communities of interest across the district. This failure is not surprising. Despite a very extensive process, the council was also unable to find a solution that both provided effective representation and complied with the plus or minus 10% rule. The council believes its final proposal achieves the best balance between effective representation and fair representation, and that a small underrepresentation for the FLEXME ward is acceptable. Non-compliance of plus or minus 10%. In respect to the non-compliance with the plus or minus 10% requirement, again, the appellant highlights the issues without providing a compliance solution that provides for effective representation of communities of interest. The council is clear that there are distinct communities of interest in the district. The council is satisfied that the current 5 general ward structure provides for effective representation of those communities of interest. The structure is well accepted in the community. Given the introduction of the Māori wards, the representation mathematics around average population per councillor means it is not possible to arrive at a compliant proposal using the existing 5 ward structure without radical surgery to ward boundaries that reduces effective representation. The only compliant option produced merged the 2 rural wards with the Heretaunga ward, which would have reduced effective representation for those communities of interest and run the risk of either our rural communities or plains communities being left without local representation altogether. It also reduced the council size, thereby reducing Māori representation. Faced with these circumstances, the council considers that its final proposal achieves the best balance between effective representation and fair representation, and that some low-level non-compliance with the plus or minus 10% rule provides the best outcome. The council considers these circumstances justifies a departure from the plus or minus 10% requirement on the grounds set out in 19V3 of the Local Government Act. The council notes that in previous decisions in relation to other local authorities, the Commission has approved representation arrangements with under and over representations of greater magnitude than those that are proposed here. Fewer councillors, higher individual remuneration, removal of barriers to people standing for office. One issue that surfaced during the representation review process was a call to reduce the number of councillors on council as a way to increase individual remuneration, thereby making standing for office more attractive to a wider range of people and/or removing perceived financial barriers to people standing. One of the appellants and a number of submitters raised this issue or variations on it. A couple of members of the council also raised it during our workshops and deliberations. The council took advice in relation to this issue. In summary, that advice said, firstly, that remuneration was not one of the principal matters set out in either the Local Government Act 2001 or the Local Government Commission's guidelines, as required to be considered as part of the representation review. Secondly, councillor remuneration was determined by a separate set of legislative provisions by the Remuneration Authority. Thirdly, based on those facts, while the size of the council was a legitimate matter to be determined in the review, it was not at all clear that remuneration was a relevant matter that could be considered in making decisions in a representation review. Therefore, council should exercise caution in giving consideration and weight to matters relating to councillor remuneration. Fourthly, while addressing barriers to participation in council elections and council business was a worthwhile matter to address, the council and the government had other means to achieve these goals outside the statutory decision-making framework pertaining to representation reviews. On those grounds, the council was not swayed by submissions calling for councillor numbers to be reduced in order to increase councillor remuneration or to address perceived barriers to participation. This was particularly the case given that such a reduction, say to 12 councillors as per option C considered by council, reduced effective representation of communities of interest and reduced representation of the Māori electoral population. In summary, the council looked closely at its communities of interest, a multitude of representation options and variations, and a number of boundary adjustments as part of its representation review process. Having done this, it was not able to arrive at a proposal that retained the current 5-ward structure, which, as I have said, is highly valued and accepted for providing effective representation of communities of interest and complied with the plus or minus 10% requirement. A compliant option known as option C was considered. However, this attracted a large degree of dissatisfaction, particularly from rural and Māori communities, for failing to provide effective representation for communities of interest and reducing the desired level of Māori representation on council. The council considered carefully all of the submissions received. Some submissions raised issues relating to council size and the underrepresentation of Flaxmere in particular, as well as a range of other issues. There were, however, no specific proposals or suggestions which, in council's view, improved fair representation of electors without detracting from effective representation of communities of interest and/or effective representation of the Māori electoral population. Having considered all the matters before it, including those matters required by law, the council arrived at what it considers to be the optimum set of representation requirements for the Hastings district. The council accepts that its proposal does not fully comply with the plus or minus 10% requirement However, after working through A, the relevant legal provisions and the Commission's guidelines, B, previous decisions by the Commission, C, the diverse communities of interest existing in the Hastings district, D, the electoral population estimates, and E, the range of representation options and the representation mathematics, and F, all the submissions received. The Council considers that in the circumstances it faces, it has established grounds under Section 19V3 of the Local Government Act 2001 for a departure from the plus or minus fair representation rule in Section 19V2. On that basis, we invite the Commission to dismiss the appeals received and confirm the Council's final proposal. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Mayor Sandra. I'm just struggling a little bit to ensure we stick to time as a courtesy for those who are lined up to speak. And I have offline messaged fellow commissioners. I don't know whether you've seen that message or not, but I wouldn't mind if you just flick me a reply. Rightio. So what I suggest is that rather than engaging in questions now, the specific topic is obvious, and I think we should roll straight into hearing from the submitters. And at the end of that process, should there be questions that we need to delve deeper, and I think we've got the opportunity to do that. I suppose what I'm saying, your presentation is very clear. It's very obvious. We understand it. I think hearing from submitters now will add the value that we're looking for. So that's a call we can make, but I'm seeking your indulgence as well. I think it's the right process, and fellow commissioners are supporting me in that. So that's what we'll do.
Right.
So Penny, can you call in, please, our first submitter, John Sholem?
Yes, I'll do that now.
Please. As I say, we've given everybody a time to kick in, and I feel pretty uncomfortable if we go out too far.
Okay, John should be joining us shortly. There we go.
Okay, and commissioners, if you go to page 50, you'll find John's submission.
And with a little bit of luck, John, when you're ready, if you want to take yourself off mute, and if putting your video on is an option, that would be great too.
Trying to unmute.
You have unmuted, we can hear you.
Good, and with a bit of luck, video will work.
Wow, it works, John. Well,
oh, my apologies for that window behind me. If I move over, it might just obscure the view. Okay.
Okay, so John, welcome. Have you been observing so far?
I tuned in about 10 minutes ago because unfortunately I had another appointment.
Okay, so just to give you a bit of a setting, so the commissioners, you'll see on the screen, Commissioner Anea and Commissioner Piper and myself. So we are the three commissioners making the decision, and then we're supported on the screen there. You'll see Donald Reesabos, Linda Kenton and Penny Langley, and they are the team from the Local Government Commission office. You'll recognise the others. We've read your original submission and confirming that we've received the additional information that you provided in the last couple of days. Commissioners have received that as well. So now's the opportunity to give us the shortened, summarised version of all of that. I don't want you to read it all out again, but just give us the shortened key points, and then if we've got any specific questions, then we can fire them in.
Okay, thank you. Te hei mauri ora, tuatahi mi ki te atua I Rangarawa, tēnā koe. Ngā mate, haere, haere, haere ki te pō. Ki te honga ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko John Sholem aho. A little about me before I start, because I think it's always important to understand where somebody's coming from and their background. First up, I'd like to make a disclosure that I am the father of Councillor Sholem on the Hastings District Council. However, the views that I expressed in my original submission, in my appeal and here now are mine. And as she knows from honing her debating skills on me as a growing teenager, I like to speak my mind. I am currently retired, but my background as a former Flaxmere resident, so I know the community back in the earlier days and have maintained an interest in it. I was a visiting teacher, and part of my role there was working with people within the community and schools and within the community to make sure that students were able to remain at school as well as attend school. I was a former school principal, although not in the community, but within the district. I also worked for the Education Review Office and had the opportunity to review a number of schools and therefore have intimate knowledge with what the problems faced, the issues schools faced within the district. And I also had another career, if you like, as an educational consultant working internationally with governments around strategy development, enterprise architecture, investment analysis, process development, and workforce development. So that's a little about me, and perhaps we'll give a little perspective to what I talk about. I don't think I need to go over what the requirements of the council are over the fair representation and making sure they meet the ±10 rule, because that's already been covered well and truly, I would think. However, I do believe that the council has failed, particularly in the second requirement when it comes to the Flaxmere ward. I congratulate them on retaining the ward because I do see Flaxmere as a community of real interest. And it's rightful that they have their own discrete representation. However, underrepresenting that ward by what I calculate as 14.46% is not a good thing. That leaves one councillor remaining representing a Flaxmere community with a population of 11,142 according to the 2018 census. And I think it's already been highlighted that the underrepresentation has also been perhaps an unintended consequence of the establishment of the Māori ward. I'd like to cover back those points, but first, and I don't know whether you got my presentation in front of you, but I'd just like to talk more about Flaxmere, that vulnerable community. As I've already mentioned, there's a population of 11,142 from the last census. And a quick history. It was originally established in the 60s to cater for a big housing demand at the time. It started as basically what was going to be sort of what we would have termed in those days as a middle class subdivision. However, with rocketing interest rates in the 80s, and when I think back at my own, I think I went from 8.5% to 22%. With those increasing interest rates of mortgage, the pressure on housing, the council of the time decided to put in a policy of cross-leasing, which meant that a single residential site became a site for two houses.
John, sorry, John, I do have to interrupt. I'm sorry. We've got all that. We've got all of that background. I'm just conscious we've got a number of people with a 10-minute slots. Can you cut to the chase and give us the key points of your concern in terms of representation?
Well, the key points of concern have to do with how key the community is. And I know you want to cut me short. I think
no, I'm not cutting you short. I'm not cutting you short. I'm just reaffirming we've read all of that background stuff. It's now just that key point, the issue around what the council proposes and your responses to that. So and I've got it clear that you're not supportive of the one ward, the one representative that's been identified, but give us some solutions as well.
I actually came to speak against the proposal on the basis of the fact that it is a young, low income community with a high Māori Pacific population who are politically disengaged, so they are not inclined to join in local or even central government activities. They have the lowest voter representation return rate in Hastings, and that makes it very difficult to get people to stand anyhow. The impact of the establishment of the Māori ward, and I'm just trying now to go ahead and find my place. Right. I actually congratulate the council on the establishment of the Māori ward, because I think it is actually a very good thing, and it is helping with diversity and giving Māori a voice, and it actually counters some of what I was talking about earlier about lack of representation. In the case of Flaxmere, 40% of that electoral roll will be moved from Flaxmere, as you well know. So that actually represents, if we took into account, if we suppose that most people were on the Māori people were on the Māori electoral roll, it would be up to 56% of the population of that particular ward is being, their probable representatives as Māori have been moved out, and they have no chance of that. That is not the council's fault. It is a consequence of this whole thing. The Māori ward at large is an at-large ward. There is no guarantee that there will be any of the 3 councillors from within the Takitimu ward will actually come from the Flaxmere district. I think it is a little under a third of Māori across Hastings district live within the Flaxmere ward. There is absolutely no guarantee, given that, and given that they are inclined to not participate in voting, that there will be, that people within the Flaxmere are not participate in voting. There's no guarantee that they will have a representative on that ward, on the Takitimu ward. So therefore, they are extremely underrepresentative. And I think the word significant is actually very important there, because I know significant holds quite a bit of weight in what councils can and can't do. So the government, the council's big assumption that there will be representative from the Māori ward doesn't really hold water. So it increases the risk of underrepresentation, or the impact of underrepresentation for Flaxmere. My understanding is that with the submissions, it was actually a record number of submissions for the council, and that in reading the report prepared for them and the agenda paper for the meeting that they made the decisions on, it showed that 28 people, or 20.7%, strongly or supported the overall proposal. And that was mentioned several times through that report as being significant. However, my reading of the report, I failed to find the actual figure given in the wording for the combined the combined submissions of those who felt that the Flaxmere ward was being underrepresented. My investigation of that, or my analysis of that, came up with a figure of 28.1%. Which, if you give significance to the weight of 20% being in support, then surely the 28.1% must also be seen as a significant figure, and possibly a more significant figure. And therefore, it must be actually attended to. I guess you're wanting my summary. Summary is that it's a vulnerable community. It's a disengaged community. It does have a population of 11,142. The ward has been underrepresented. 40% of those eligible voters who live within the ward itself are not able to vote for the single other representative. Not a fault of the council, I agree, but that it is a reality. 28.1% of the submissions came through actually opposed the review as presented by the council for the reason of underrepresentation. I believe that cannot be ignored and a solution needs to be found. Whether the solution is to actually form a board, as Ngāti Kahungunu suggested, or whether the one of the ward, the Takitimu ward representatives, councillors, is actually tagged to Flaxmere, so that's voted from within the Flaxmere community. Sort of a de facto Flaxmere Māori ward, I suppose. There is no magic solution to this. I'm not sure whether the council really explored in any depth of actually separating Havelock, Hastings and Flaxmere and seeing what impact that would have had on the figures. Because I believe the reason for the original merger of Havelock North and Hastings probably doesn't exist as it did back then. I wish I had a magic bullet solution. The one thing I do know is that Flaxmere rightfully has a discrete representation, but one representative from a ward for a ward that struggles to get people politically engaged has a large area of low income, low education levels, and I suggest even the people who do stand, if they find that they can find the courage to stand, would need considerable support on the council just to function as other councillors might. One councillor is not enough.
Okay, John, thank you. Are there specific questions from commissioners? Commissioner Piper?
Thanks, John. That was helpful. A couple of questions. Let's start with that last comment that you made about a single councillor needing a lot of support.
Yeah.
How have you got views of that, of any other of the ward representation in the district?
Well, the counter is, if I look at the Hastings and Havelock North, you would be looking at the opposite end of the spectrum as far as being able to find competent representation. Okay. And secondly, you said that Ngāti Kahungunu had proposed a community board. Did I hear that right? I think that, pretty sure that's what I read in their submission to the council. Yes. Okay. Okay. The council will no doubt have a comment about that. Yeah. Just one sort of, given your emphasis on disengagement in the Flaxmere community, yeah, how would establishing a community board help? I think when you look at the community, so if we look at Māori and Pacific community, we are often talking about community rather than individual. What we as Pākehā, we often find it easier to represent others as an individual ourselves, stand up and speak, and we can make decisions. We've got processes of going out and coming back. But the sense of community in Māori and Pacific in particular means that people often work and awhi each other and support each other, and it is easier that is done from within the community with the community members together, other than trying to expect that to happen from people from outside your community. Okay, so having two councillors from the community, Flaxmere community, to be able to awhi and support each other and work together would help them overcome some of the struggles they have to actually put themselves forward and speak up for a start. I understand that, John, but my question was, what would be the contribution and how would a community board help? Okay, well, the community board would help fill some of that, because you've then got that as I said, a community of support behind you and helping with decision making and making sure that what is said and what is represented comes forward. I know that some people, even myself today, and I've got lots of experience with speaking and to governments and all the rest of it, and I'm struggling a little today. Even I find it difficult to represent and say things off the cuff and when I need to, and then I'll go back later and reflect and say, why didn't I say that? When you are supported by another person or a group of people.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
I understand your argument for two. It was the community board, what role it might play, and I understand your answer. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Anea.
Thank you very much, and thank you, John, for your time today. We really appreciate it. I think that I've got two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Often people will say to us that what's good for Māori is good for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you've talked about the deprivation and the lack of engagement, etc., etc. Surely statistics show that that's quite a common theme through Māori Pacifica. So I don't understand why you think that even if 3 Māori councillors came from outside the Flaxmere area, help me understand why they wouldn't understand the aspirations and the struggles of that community.
I don't think I really said they wouldn't. I said that there is no guarantee that they would represent on that case for the community itself. See, what we're providing here, and I think you rightfully said, right across government, we look at, and everything, health, education, you name it, we look at the needs of Māori and Pacific, and they come up in those statistics. Let's be fair about that. And that's the very reason why they put equity funding in place within education, was to help support that. Now, the 10+ rule is actually not an equity rule, it's an equal rule. It spreads things equally. And so when we look at a community like Flaxmere that's got a high proportion of Māori and Pacific, we need to look at, does the equal rule actually work well for them for effective and fair representation? And I put it to you, it doesn't, that we need to look at equity here, not equality. And the equitable thing to do would be to support them by having another councillor.
Okay.
So just one more quick question. In your submission, you talk about underinvestment in this community. Can you give me some examples of that underinvestment?
Look, underinvestment goes in a big way right back, and I mean, it is the history of the community. And unfortunately, I got a little cut short on going through some of that.
We have read it though, John, but I just want you just to highlight, is there any infrastructure things that have not been attended to? What do they not have compared to other communities of interest, especially within Hastings?
Right, but you need to put a historical perspective on it, I'm sorry. So what they didn't have for many years was a high school. For many, many years, they didn't have a high school. They didn't get a high school until they took away the intermediate and replaced it with a high school. While I was living in Flaxmere with my students, high school schooling was in Flaxmere, which required busing, etc. High levels of unattendance resulted, and lots of other things happened. Interests for students in those days, for my own children, things like dance and scouting and whatever else, we had to go into Hastings. I worked in Hastings, I worked in Havelock North in the end. To get the equity out of my home after the cross leasing, I actually lifted my home up like a lot of others did, physically lifted it and moved it out to Havelock North, and I watched it grow in value in $20,000 to $30,000 increments with every kilometre it travelled down the road.
John, just sorry, I've got to bring you back again. Can you give the Commissioner a specific answer on something currently that's missing in the area compared to others?
I believe that the council are doing a good job out there at the moment. And I can't give you a specific, because
Okay.
the one I did have, I think they're addressing around, I mean, it was the private ownership of the supermarket out there that I don't believe was servicing the community particularly well. And I understand now that maybe the council are providing land and council land to build a new supermarket.
Okay. we'll leave it at that. I think that gives us a fair sense.
Yeah.
However, could I make one comment around that?
Around the
Because
supermarket.
no, not about the supermarket. Sorry, your thing about your question about what the level of support that they might be getting at the moment. This review, I understand that your councillors are required to make a review about every 6 years. Am I correct there?
Correct.
And this one review was actually generated because of the Māori ward, but there is no guarantee that it has to be reviewed again. I think we're all aware that once things are put in place, they're harder to remove than or to alter once a thing is in place.
Yeah.
This review, therefore, technically covers or outlines what should happen for the next 6 years. There is no guarantee that the current councillors will be in representation in that 6-year period, nor the mayor, and therefore there's no guarantee that the good work that they're currently doing will continue for that underrepresented community.
Okay, got it. We need to move on, John. Thank you very, very
Thank
much
you.
for the observations that you've made, and commissioners have got a good handle on it. So we'll move to the next presenter, please.
Thank you. Signing out.
Ka kite. I just got to say, which I forget every time, is heads down by commissioners doesn't mean we're falling asleep. We're just writing notes. We're trying to work out where the next action point is. So please don't be offended. So Sandra Tuilepa is next. Now, Sandra's been invited by the commission to speak.
And Sandra, you've joined us in the meeting now. When you're ready, you're all over it. Lovely, thank you.
Kia ora, Sandra. And just for commissioner's sake, if you go to page 67, you'll find the original submission there. Sandra, have you been observing so far?
Yes, I caught the last 10 minutes of.
Okay, perfect. So you've got a little bit of a sense of what's going on. So we're looking forward to your observations. Just identify the commissioners for you, Anea and Piper and myself. And then the rest of the people on the screen, or almost all of them. Now, let me start that again. The other 3 on the screen that you don't know are representatives from the office in Wellington, and the other 2, I'm sure you recognise your Deputy Mayor and the team at Council. So we're in your hands, Sandra.
So thank you very much for the opportunity. I've actually prepared a speech, so I'll work through that. Thank you.
Yep.
Talofa lava, my name is Sandra Tuilepa. My family, which consisted of my parents and 2 older siblings, migrated to New Zealand 37 years ago, and from 1986 to this very day, our parents have made Flaxmere our home. My siblings and I attended Flaxmere Primary School, Flaxmere Intermediate, and Flaxmere College, a tradition now passed down to our children. I'm very proud to call Flaxmere my home. You know, Flaxmere doesn't want 2 councillors, we need it. In the representation review from 2018, it states that the population of the Hastings Havelock ward sat at 44,230 with 8 councillors, while Mohaka and Kauranaki wards sat at a population of 5,700 with 1 councillor per ward. Flaxmere's population, however, sat at 11,142 with 2 councillors. If we were to talk about fairness in numbers, and with the looming proposal of 1 councillor appointed to Flaxmere, it would only make sense to suggest that every other ward should be allocated 1 councillor for every 11,000 people. To take a councillor away would be to deprive Flaxmere of representation that would help different ethnicities battle cultural barriers and give the 14% an equal voice with the Māori. Can you guarantee that the potentially appointed representative of Flaxmere will voice my concerns as passionately as I would myself? Will they be able to properly and respectfully voice concerns of Flaxmere as a whole? What if they don't live in Flaxmere or seldom venture into our neck of the woods? Is it even then possible to represent a people you don't know? 2 councillors will provide a voice for the voiceless. It would mean that all Flaxmere residents would have a voice. Not one body of people will go unheard. To take that voice away would be to disregard a community that desperately need the help. We may not understand politics and policies and processes within council, but we understand that we need our concerns heard, which means we need someone sitting at the council table that will truthfully and honestly have our best interest at heart. You know, I typed the word Flaxmere into Wikipedia and this is what it reads. Flaxmere was built to cater to the housing demand of Hastings. Flaxmere was intended to be an upper middle class subdivision, but because land was subdivided into smaller lots, it turned into a low income neighbourhood. So right off the bat, Flaxmere was set up for long-term deprivation. We rank high in areas of poverty, homelessness, child and domestic abuse, young users of drug and alcohol, high unemployment rates, just to name a few. And these challenges are not going to go without sufficient help. To take away a councillor would be to knowingly disregard a collection of cultural communities and assume that we will be culturally, socially, ethically, and above all, properly taken care of by a selected councillor. To take away a councillor would be to take away from the Flaxmere family. Taking away a councillor will be like taking away a parent from a two-parent home and placing the responsibilities of two parents on the shoulders of one. Flaxmere will be led by a single parent and will start to display signs of a single parent family by no fault or control of our own. The Flaxmere family is growing. 400 plus builds plus new builds means that our suburb will increase in number, but our single parent will be so far stretched between us all. The measure of the quality of the input from that one councillor will be tried and strained. I've grown up in and around Flaxmere long enough to know that we stand desperately in need to receive. I've grown up with friends from broken homes. I've lived a life of terrible poverty and deeply appreciate the support from our Flaxmere councillors over the years. Councillors who have reached out to us and literally given food from their own pantry and fridge so that we, the people, are taken care of, and you're going to potentially take that away. We all have looked to Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Pauline and Councillor Ollie as heroes of our community because they have poured their hearts into Flaxmere, in particular Councillor O'Keefe. Even during the loss of his precious wife Pam, he stood for Flaxmere, helped to bring about positive change and reaching people and communities that no other person could or would dare to go, because that is the spirit of Flaxmere. Flaxmere is a community like no other. Unique because we have a strong community spirit, and two councillors will ensure that no one is left behind. What council think is best for us isn't necessarily what is actually best for us. Have council members sat long enough within our community to truly know what we all need both culturally and spiritually? Have you sat with our distressed elderly or our suicidal youth to know how to reach and save the one? Have you stood long enough and watched the tennis courts fill with Māori and Pacifica pride through sports? Have you truly stopped to look at the beauty of our community, despite barriers and its severe poverty, to recognise that the change you suggest comes not from the opinion of the collective community, but from a few minor groups? I beg the Commissioner to consider Council's choice for one Flaxmere councillor. I beg you to listen to us. The council body will be able to live with the decision made after today because it won't impact them directly. I speak for our Balangi people, our Indian people, our Asian people, and our Pasifika people. The introduction of the 3 Māori seats is a historical event for which I feel blessed to see happen. It's about time Māori and tangata whenua have the representation and recognition they deserve. But what about me? What about what I deserve? What about what my children deserve? What about my friends and their children and their parents who, like my parents, speak little to no English? In all honesty, we're sick and tired of eating crumbs that fall from the lavish dinner served at the council table, or have a proposal presented that we didn't choose because people not connected to Flaxmere thought it was what's best for us. One councillor isn't what's best for us. We deserve better because we're worthy of better. I speak for Flaxmere because Flaxmere has made me who I am today. Whaftai lava.
Well done, Sandra. Well done. Great presentation. Come from the heart. Yeah, I respect what you've observed. There'll be some questions though. Commissioners, while the commissioners are thinking, my question to you would be, what is your comment in relation to the Flaxmere Community Committee and the potential that that might be able to deliver as articulated by the council?
So the Flaxmere Committee, I don't understand, sorry, what you're referring to.
Are you aware of a Flaxmere
Board?
Can I just have Mayor Sandra give me the correct name, accurate name?
Flaxmere Planning Committee.
Are you aware of that, Sandra?
I am aware of people who are involved in the planning committee and support that. It's an amazing process that happens, and it gets our views heard at council. I thought you were referring to the Flaxmere board that would potentially be.
Oh, sorry, no, the planning committee.
No. Yeah, I am aware of them. Yes.
Do they add value?
They add value, and I'm really just speaking for the Pacifica people. I've not been engaged or know anyone, any immediate family or friends that have been affected or impacted positively by that group. No.
Okay, no, that's kind of like important stuff for us. I mean, we're not in your community, so it's just nice to understand, because the council are suggesting that the Flaxmere Planning Committee has the potential to be an additional layer of representation, and we're trying to work out, what are the options. So I'll just go to Commissioner Piper and just give you a question.
Please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sandra. It's very helpful, but I have got a couple of questions. One is, actually the first one's to the officials or to the council. Wasn't there some discussion in the paper that the council was looking at some alternatives to working with the community, either Flaxmore Community Committee or some such, or have I got muddled again, as I do from time to time?
No, I don't think you have, and we'll ask that to come in the right of reply when we get to council.
Yeah, but I just
noted. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Okay, no, because I thought, oh, maybe I've got it wrong. Okay, so Sandra, 400 new dwellings, are they being built now? Are they coming?
Yes, so they've been worked on. So at the end of Flaxmere Ave, you've got some builds happening there. Some have already completed, but they're planning to develop new builds in between Carnarvon, where the swimming pool is, and off Swansea Road. So yeah, there will be new builds there.
And a funny question, because we can't do a site visit given the pandemic, how many entrances are there into Flaxmere? I've got this in my head that I've got to drive to a particular side and then go up one. If I'm coming from Hastings, are there two ways to get into Flaxmere?
But there are several ways to enter Flaxmere from Hastings and from Havelock North, and also from Fernhill. So several entries. Yeah. Cool.
Good. I'm glad I asked, because I had that funny idea, Megan. Lastly, you you mentioned community boards and then you stopped. How could a community board assist with representing Flaxmere community?
I think a community board is a great idea, but all it becomes is the people want someone that will represent them at council directly. I mean, if you're going to create a board, who then are going to pay for that board to operate? Will that be coming out of rates payers? And so either way, a community board will consistently be chipping away, although it will be put there to seemingly make progress and take the people's voices, but will be giving ideas to the board that we may not know will be reaching council the way that it's intended to reach council. So I think a board is a great start, but I don't think it'll be very effective, especially when we have different levels of ground. So I call them ground level Flaxmerians. So I'm a ground level Flaxmere person. So I've lived through the poverty, through the child abuse, through all of that kind of process, and managed to be where I'm at today because we've got encouragement from people like our councillors. So personally, I don't think a Flaxmere board is going to impact very much on the community. No.
Okay.
Thank you for your generosity.
Okay. I think we're done. Sandra, we are. So look, thank you very, very much for those honest, free and frank observations you've made. I do want to applaud the commission officers who have gone out of their way to ensure that a number of you were invited to speak. And I think that's very appropriate and frankly, very respectful as well. So thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Okay.
Now, just to give you a bit of a heads up, we're supposed to have a wee, no pun intended, a small break, and I think we should still have that break for 10 minutes. So can I suggest that we adjourn for just 9 minutes and we'll kick off again at 11 o'clock? And I know, Penny, have we still got somebody waiting? Yeah,
Yes, Brendan, we do. Paula is waiting in the wings.
We just apologise to Paula. We are a little bit behind, but if we can we'll kick off sharp 11 o'clock.
12 o'clock.
Sorry, gosh, is it that late? 12 o'clock, correct. 12 o'clock. And you'll do whatever you need to do. This stays online alive. So just turn your mute off, team, cameras if necessary, and we'll see you at 12 noon. Okay, we must be with dot of 12. We're all here. Penny.
By the way, the Kahungunu, Ngāti Kahungunu did mention a community board as a possibility. I've just found the,
Yeah.
I'll just bring Paula into the meeting with us now.
And commissioners, if you go to page 63.
Trying to. Hi.
Hi.
Kia Paula, welcome.
Morena. Oh, it's not even morning anymore. Good afternoon.
Oh no, well, that did right, it's midday. Have you been able to observe so far?
Yes, I've watched everything this morning.
Fantastic. Okay, no need to do any more. We're in your hands, Paula. Welcome.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I live and have resided in Flaxmere for the last 44 years. I raised my own family. I run and own 2 childcare centres in Flaxmere, and I own multiple properties where I provide rentals and emergency housing. Flaxmere is a vulnerable community. It has a high crime rate, large gang population, low income, overcrowded housing, and a transitional population due to main employment being seasonal work. This change and proposal from the council and the percentage of 14.6% is actually an underestimation. There will be more people not on the electoral roll. This is underestimated number. As many residents listed on the roll in other areas, it's not a priority for them to update this information. I believe the numbers will be higher than the electoral roll reflects, and with the new social housing properties being built, the number will also grow. Flaxmere is a community that is dangerously unsafe for its residents. None of our councillors reside in the community. It is unsafe to go out at night. Every night and every day, there is either another domestic incident, heavy gang presence, dangerous roaming dogs, cars doing burnouts, drug dealings, constant parties, water pipes bursting, drains blocking, and cars just being dumped. That's just to list a few. Our community needs more support, not less. I would not encourage any young families to move here or businesses to set themselves up. We are a community in crisis. Flaxmere recently had some attention with our award-winning park and activities being held. Unfortunately, this is too little, too late, and it's superficial. You can dress up a cow, it's still a cow. The council's proposals and numbers presented don't represent the demand in our area, the needs and the help required. Over-representation is required at this time of crisis. 2 councillors are a minimum requirement at council, as this is where the decisions and the votes are made, and this impacts our community. Don't sugarcoat the problems Flaxmere has.
Well, that was pretty short, sharp and succinct, Paula. Well done. Thank you. I've got a specific question because clearly it's the issue of the day. Can you give me a sense of what your perspective is on the Flaxmere Planning Committee?
As I say, we need more support. I'm like the others, I actually don't know who's on it and haven't had any involvement with them. So I think they need to make themselves more known to us. So
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I feel.
Okay, so what I'll ask in the writer reply to the council is, can you just give us a perspective on the Flaxmere Planning Committee in terms of what you understand or expect it to be and what you expect it to be delivering? Might be useful from a public perspective to understand. Okay, Commissioner Anea.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for making yourself available today. We really appreciate it. I've just got one question. There's been a suggestion that having a community board could be a way of improving the representation for Flaxmere. What's your view on that?
As I say, we're in crisis. I think we need everything possible. It's a crisis.
Okay, thank you.
You're a busy lady with a lot going on. Thanks for making the time available at our invitation to come and speak. It's very, very important that we get a variety of perspectives for her. So I really appreciate, and you no doubt you've been listening in, and quite possibly you'll listen in some more, but appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Back to you, Penny. We've got Nick Dickinson.
So at the moment, Nick has not joined into the meeting. So
Okay.
I propose that we skip across Nick and on to Tracy. So I'll just bring Tracy in now.
So Tracy Tuamasevi is next.
With a little bit of luck, Tracy will join the meeting in a second. All right, looking good. Tracy, when you're ready, if you want to bring yourself off mute, lovely.
Kia ora, Tracy, welcome.
Kia ora, everyone.
Have you been observing so far?
I just caught the last 5 minutes, so I just caught the tail end of, I think it was Paula.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just as a courtesy to give you a perspective, there's 3 commissioners on the screen: Commissioners Anea, Piper, and myself. There's 3 other faces on the screen that you probably won't recognise: Donald Reesabos, Penny Langley, and Linda Canton from the Commission. I suspect the other 2 screens you'll recognise. So you've been invited to come along by the Commission to assist us in this deliberation of representation, and given your role in representing the Flaxmere Planning Committee, it'd be quite useful to get your perspective.
Sure. My comments will be brief. I've been a resident in Flaxmere since 1987, along with my family. And I've been with the Flaxmere Planning Committee on and off since 2009. I came on board because I manage events, and at the time part of the Flaxmere plan was to hold family events, and so I started to engage with the Flaxmere Planning Committee in that from that perspective, and became a member of the committee a little bit later. I can't even think of how long I've been the chair, but for a little while anyway. And so the committee itself is made up of It's a rolling committee. It's a voluntary committee. It's a committee where people who are passionate about Flaxmere can join. At the moment, there are about 16 active members in the committee, and they largely represent their own networks. So, and by networks, I mean they represent school principals, churches, the Flaxmere Village Business Association, community representatives and other providers and groups from the committee, from the community. And it's, as far as the district council is concerned, I think we are more of a Flaxmere reference committee. They certainly consult with us on everything that the council wishes to gain community feedback from, as well as going directly to the community. And so the committee, I think as soon as I became chair, and it's about 4 or 5 years, we decided to change the way that we operate, and that we would really reduce our focus down to 3 things for our community. 1, to try and improve the communication throughout our community. 2, to advocate on behalf of the community, in particular with the district council. And 3, to support what was going on in our community. We never decided that we were going to be the be all and end all of anything to do with Flaxmere. And there was some opposition way back when around who was the Flaxmere Planning Committee and who are they to tell us what to do. Well, we didn't want to be that. And so we, that third part around supporting what's already going on and hopefully we've gone a long way to try and improve those 3 things for Flaxmere. Some things I agreed with what Paula mentioned. We have been a community in crisis, and I don't want to ignore some of the negative things that are happening in our community, but they happen in every community. I think Flaxmere has gained a reputation where it's highlighted for that reputation more than it is for the good things that are happening there. And there are a lot of good things. And I need to mention the district council has been very supportive, certainly in the last decade, before my time as well, but certainly more recently around putting focus on Flaxmere and helping us to turn that reputation around and fix things from the ground up. And with regards to the take on the table, the kaupapa that we're discussing at the moment, I am not as worried as maybe Paula and others in the community around this, the recommendation to go to lose a councillor for Flaxmere and to gain 3 Māori wards for the district council for a couple of reasons. We do have a high Māori population in Flaxmere, and so fairly confident that we will be represented in some way in those 3 wards. If not the fact that we may put our own people up from Flaxmere to vie for one of those 3 councillor roles. The second being that that the district council has poured quite a bit of resourcing and support into Flaxmere, and I know that our mayor and certainly the 2 councillors who are currently representing Flaxmere are advocating for all sorts of things to happen within Flaxmere, and certain that that will continue whether we have 1 councillor or 2 councillors. Happy that we have been consulted in discussions that the council are already having around possible standing committee for Flaxmere, because there are a lot of, I don't want to say outstanding, but there are a lot of projects that were put on hold maybe a couple of years ago because they became quite significant. And at that stage, it was floated that it could be a project manager over those projects. And I think this, the standing committee may be an updated response to all of that stuff that is in store for Flaxmere. And I know the council has already had discussions around different ways that that committee or the voice of Flaxmere could be involved in that committee, because the standing committee would be largely councillors, actually totally councillors. Happy that we have been kept in the loop around discussions around how the Flaxmere Planning Committee could continue and in what capacity. So in general, I think fairly supportive of the recommendation to make the changes.
Brilliant, Tracy. Thanks for those observations. Can I ask, you said that the Flaxmere Planning Committee has regular council engagement. Can you give me a sense of what does that mean?
That is.
Yeah.
Well, we do have an operational representative in the committee, and she's part of the community team.
Is that the council staff member?
Yes. So she's a regular part of the Flaxmere Planning Committee. Members of different departments come in to speak with the committee at request or to consult with the committee on different things that are happening there. We regularly submit to the annual plan, submissions to that, and anything else that the community feels that we need to advocate on behalf of Flaxmere. And so it is quite regular. Okay. And we also, our two councillors regularly attending our meetings as well. And okay. So very much open dialogue right through to Sandra, the Mayor.
Okay, are you funded in any way? How are you supported?
No. We applied to community trusts to complete majority of what we do as a committee, and that's more around the events. We have had in the past been a contracting entity for community groups who are vying for council or other contracts, and so we will, kind of administrate those in that way. And we have received some support from the council to run those events and communications and other things.
Last question from me. The 16 members make up the committee at the moment. How are those people? How is the committee? Is it elected, voted, tapped on the shoulder? What's the process to get involved?
It's very much an open committee, and so at this stage it can be as we don't have a limitation on how big it is. We welcome all and sundry to attend. I didn't want to say that we operate in a tiered kind of fashion. So there are those who are passionate about Flaxmere who can regularly attend meetings. The next tier are those whose networks those people belong to, and also others who are interested but can't make meetings. So we try and keep everyone in the loop who can. Okay.
Fine. Sorry, last question. How do you get the message out? You have your meetings, so how do you disseminate the messages?
So for Flaxmere, it's largely social media.
Right.
We have a website. So flaxmere.community. We have a Facebook page, My Flaxmere, and we try to link in with all of the other Flaxmere social media pages, so that, and we also publish a quarterly newsletter that goes into every home.
Thank you very much. Great clarity. Are there any other questions from commissioners? No, I didn't think there were. Look, Trace, can I just say thank you? And from a commissioner's perspective, and I'm sure on behalf of the community up there, that's all volunteer work that you're doing. You're to be congratulated. And thank you very much for your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Couple. Penny?
Yeah, Brendan, so just a wee update. So Nick did join the meeting, but has now popped away again. But we do have Nigel with us. So I'll bring Nigel into the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And commissioners, we go to page 65.
And Nigel, when you're ready, if you want to pop yourself off mute, and you look like you've got the hang of it.
Welcome, Nigel. Have you been watching proceedings so far, Nigel?
I just watched Tracy, who I know, and that
Right.
came 5 minutes ago.
Okay. So quick introduction, just to give you a sense. On the screen, you'll see 3 commissioners, Piper and Anea and myself. There's 3 representatives from the Commission office in Wellington, Donald Reesabos, Linda Canton, and the CEO, Penny Langley. The other 2 screens you'll recognise.
Yes.
So look, we've got the submissions, obviously, and you've got the opportunity. We've invited a number of people from the Commission, and you're one of them. So we're looking forward to a summary of your observations, the short version.
Yeah. I've only got a short version.
Oh, that's great.
But I just want to say hello to everybody and hello to my friends at the Hastings District Council. I see you around the table there. Great to see you. I haven't got too much to say, actually, but I'm concerned with the reduction of one Flaxmere Ward councillor in what is proposed to take place. I've just observed over the years how Flaxmere's had to struggle for where it has got to now, and I feel that a reduction in councillors would make it even harder for Flaxmere to get what Flaxmere needs. With all due respect, Flaxmere is on the move at the moment, thanks to the initiative being pushed by Hastings District Council. It hasn't always been like that. Just before Tracy was on the Flaxmere Planning Committee, I was the vice chairman of that committee for a number of years. It was set up originally at the initiative of the Hastings District Council to sort of be a bridge between the community and council. That's basically how it was set up. To cover a plan of Flaxmere for 10 years in 2005 to see that different things were implemented. An example of the sort of battle we have in Flaxmere is that for many years we've been battling for a supermarket and for development for our village town centre, if you call it that. And I think just recently we've finally had a breakthrough. We've finally had a breakthrough where we're going to see a supermarket, which is great. But it's taken a lot of effort to get to that point, and I think that exemplifies sometimes the battle and struggle that Flaxmerians like me feel we've had to really push for things. And I think that one less Flaxmere Ward councillor would make it even harder for us to get what we feel that we need. Now I realise that the Takitumu Maori Ward councillors are going to come on. That's 3 of them. But I give respect to that, but that's not necessarily meaning they're going to give exclusive attention to my community in Flaxmere. Whereas a second Flaxmere Ward councillor would give exclusive attention to represent my community. And that's the advantage I see with 2 Flaxmere Ward councillors as opposed to one of them being replaced by the others. So I'm an advocate for retaining the 2, the Flaxmere Ward councillors. And I also take note that if we reduce it to 1 Flaxmere Ward councillor, then that 1 ward councillor is now representing 14% more than the average of what he should be representing. So on that statistic alone, I think that we deserve to have a second ward councillor for Flaxmere. I realise that people watching perhaps think, well, there goes Flaxmere again, blowing its horn and always complaining about underrepresentation. But I think that's the general air of the public in Flaxmere would say, no, we want to retain two ward councillors for this community. And all that in respect of the fact that there are good things happening at the initiative of Hastings District Council. It's not moaning against them. They've done great things and there's things moving ahead in our community. But I think we need to retain 2 councillors.
Right on, Nigel. Thank you for those observations. A little gem of information that you popped down then that I distinctly was not aware of, you mate, and I just want to be sure I understood it. You said that the Flaxmere Planning Committee was originally established by the Hastings District Council.
It was the initiative. It was the initiative, really, of the Hastings District Council. I remember it being set up with a councillor called David Pearce at the time. And at the beginning, we were tapped on the shoulder to see if we would like to be representative on that. but then it became open to anyone in the community that we felt that would really be of value to the community of Flaxmere. It's a great committee. We saw great things happen with that committee. It was a great initiative. And I only came off the committee because I had other things to do.
Right.
Yeah, no complaints against that committee.
No, what I'm trying to understand in terms of representation, given its role in the community, and when we get to when we get back to the council, we'll obviously be able to drill down more to understand what their expectations are, what level of support they're providing, what do they anticipate, how do they anticipate this body maybe being able to contribute on the basis of the decision they've made to have one councillor. So that's kind of like, I'm trying to round that out and get my head around it.
Okay.
Commissioners will have questions. Commissioner Piper and then Commissioner Anea.
What are your thoughts, if any, about a proposal to establish a community board for the Flaxmere community?
Well, I remember that idea was first mentioned way back when in the first year that we started the Flaxmere Planning Committee. So the idea has been around for a while. But I had a question regarding that, and I'd like to sort of ask, if there was a Flaxmere Community Board, and you talk about it would be funded, so that means that meetings would be funded for those on the board. What would an increase in rates look like for the Flaxmere people? What sort of increase?
Well, that's a decision out of our hands, but would be a decision of the Hastings District Council if and when.
Yeah. So that to me is an important question, because I think if it's not much of an increase, then Flaxmere people might welcome a Flaxmere community board along those terms. But it's all going to depend upon the dollars. And if it's too much, people are going to say, we don't need to, we've done without it up till now. And they'll say, well, the Flaxmere Planning Committee is doing okay.
But hang on, can I just press the point slightly? Given the legislative restraints that we have in terms of a plus and minus 10%, given the implications to that of a second councillor, what role, what could, positive or negative, could the establishment of a community board do to, I don't know, mitigate?
Mitigate, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I read that in the notes that were sent to me, that throwing out the option of a Flaxmere Community Board. I would prefer to have what we have at the moment, the status quo of 2 Flaxmere Ward councillors, and let the Flaxmere Planning Committee continue operating and doing its good work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Anea.
Thanks, Nigel. That's great. I've just got 2 questions. My first question is, you talked about the exclusivity of having 2 ward representatives, but I just wondered if you were aware, when they do their oath of office, everyone pledges to act in the best interests of the district. So although they are voted in the ward, and though they could be living outside the ward as well, have you got any comment on that?
That is true, but the fact is, you're talking about the head and people making a commitment to represent the whole council or the district. That's fine, and that's the way it should be. But people who go into council are going to have at their heart the particular area that they live in, and I think that we've seen 2 representatives from Flaxmere push their weight in a way that I think we've seen things achieved that might not have been achieved for Flaxmere if they weren't there. Now, I can't give you any examples of that, but I'm talking about observation over quite a few years. I believe that the current Flaxmere Ward councillors both don't want to see a reduction, and believe that 2 is necessary as well. But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, Nigel. Well, so we've had the questions, and obviously when we get to the council, we'll drill down a bit deeper. So thank you very much for clearly the work you do in your community, and thanks for making time available to.
Can I just ask a couple of 2 short questions there, Brendan?
Yeah, go for it.
So I understand that that the commission has the ability to overturn the council's decision to reduce it to one, councillor?
The commission makes a final decision after cautious deliberation based on what's presented to it.
Okay, and then the other question is, when will the final decision be made?
We're obligated by law to be concluded by the 10th of April.
Okay, all right. Hey, look,
So
thanks for your time.
Not far away.
Okay, cheers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you. See you guys.
See
All the
ya.
best. Bye-bye.
Okay, Penny, where are we at? I know
So,
you had poor old Paula.
Nick, so
Nick.
for anyone who has been watching the chat, you will have seen that Nick is trying to juggle work commitments and being here with us. Nick isn't in the meeting at the moment, but
Right.
Crystal is here. So I think
Right.
the best thing that we can do is just
Yep.
roll on and hope for the best.
Yep, let's do that. So page 61, team. Kia ora, Crystal.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Have you been watching?
I have been.
So you got a fair idea what's going on?
Yes, I do.
We're in your hands then.
Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe. Well, tuatahi ngā mana i ngā reo e ngā parika rangaranga tēnā tātou katoa. I'm a little bit nervous. It's my first time doing this, but I'm going to sort of take lead from where Paula, Tracy and Nigel have left off. So I've been a resident of Pāharakeke for the last 24 years, moved here in 1999. And I'll have to say, I have to agree, first of all, with our councillor, who's very, very vocal amongst our community, and that's Councillor Henare O'Keefe, where he says Flaxmere is not a liability, Flaxmere is an opportunity. And just on that baseline there, e Wāma, I currently where I live, I see land and housing development happening. So that's an indication that our population is going to grow. So the requirement of having the 2 turu or the 2 seats and the 3 Māori wards is going to be needed for our community. Also, the education investment is happening. We've had the redevelopment of our college, also Kimiota School. You know, we had some sad news around Kimiota where it could have possibly been shut down due to the infrastructure, but they've invested in that. Also, we have our Mata Waka Marae, Te Aranga Marae, which is always in use. Unfortunately, with our pandemic going on, there's been a few restrictions, but as I understand, being quite a very active member, I always like to ask around. For some of the whānau who know me, I'm a very vocal wahine. So yeah, I ask around our community what's going on with Te Aranga Marae, and they are working through how do we get our whānau back in there. As one of the members, I'm actually looking at going into there myself to host and teach te reo lessons online for our community and for a few whare wānanga. Also the business opportunities, the small business opportunities. I myself am a small business owner of not only one business, but I'll be launching a second one very shortly. Straight out of the heart of Pāharakeke, and they're all over. I've just actually done this morning a bit of a promotion for one of our Flaxmere communities who does the chains for our mask. Also, I think that we're also very diverse within our community. We have many facilities, and our village operates for kaumātua, ranging all the way through to our tamariki. So the involvement around what our community doing is huge. So we need to have these māngai here representing and vocalising this kōrero for us. Also the employment that John Bostock and them provide for our community. I have many friends who actually walk down the road, it's a walk away for some of them, or a bike away, you know, so they're environmentally aware that kaua e mahi te waka, don't use their waka, go for a walk and they'll get there on their bikes. In the morning, I go for a run down our ave and then use our park as well, our very famous Flaxmere Park. And I see whānau members down there in the morning, you know, so when Paula kind of said that it's a scary community, I'll have to disagree with that, because I run every morning and sometimes it's, you know, we can tell that daylight savings is about to run out, because when I do go for my run around about 5:45 in the morning, it's a little bit dark, but I still feel safe. I still feel welcomed by those who are participating and walking and running along the park and along the roads as well. And just to sort of touch on the planning committee, that has been a bit of a corridor that I've been hearing with Tracy, Nigel and Paul, and with yourselves as well. Yes, I'm very aware of what the planning committee do. I keep myself very updated on their Facebook page, and also we have a few other Flaxmere Facebook pages that keep us updated on what's happening. I don't know if you're aware, but just a couple of weeks ago we had some little nanakia tamariki sort of damage the backboard of our beautifully new basketball court. However, because that pānui went up onto our Facebook pages, the community just got in. We got in, the parents actually grabbed their children, made them go back down there to clean up the mess. And of course, Henare O'Keefe being very vocal and very involved was down there as well. So yeah, you know, we're a very tight-knit whānau, you know, more than a community. We're becoming a whānau over the years since I've been here. And finally, e hoa ma, I'd just like to finish off as that a highly involved community member. I'd love to see, you know, some of these events still carry on. I MC the Matariki event. I MC the Christmas in the Park event. So I do know Tracy Tumasevi on a professional and personal level, as well as the Te Rangi Huata, who is our events organizer at the Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated. So yeah, I think the opportunity here is vast. So to have more representation and more voices representing our community is a must, e hoa ma. So yeah, koe ngā taku kōrero. Oh, sorry, can I just finish off on one thing too? Sorry. I'm also a board member on Te Taiwhenua o Here Taunga for Te Haro board for my marae of Ruahapia, and to just sort of talk about the Waingako development as well, and also Te Whareahuru, that is of course a Taiwhenua kaupapa as well. You know, even that we've got Te Taiwhenua o Here Taunga looking at investing in this. So it's not just about, you know, our little community here. We've got our Hastings whānau also looking at this community to invest in, to develop it. So yeah, we do need to remain a status quo, or if anything, increase. So yeah, tēnā tātou koe ngā kūpōrero.
Kia ora, Crystal. It'd be a terrifying thought if you weren't nervous when you presented to us.
Could you tell by the way I was speaking really fast?
I just want to say to you that the great thing with technology in this digital age is that you press a button and you get full screen of the individual that's talking. So I know there's a whole bunch of pictures. So in the purity of kanohi ki te kanohi, I put you on full screen and I look you directly in the eye as you present it. So you know, well done. Well done. We got the message. Commissioner Anea has a question. When you go off, there you go.
Sorry, it took me a while to get that technology right. There's only one thing worse than full screen, is then when you're actually asking a question, you get full screen of yourself. And that's really, really challenging. So I've gone back off that full screen just so that I don't scare myself too much. Thank you so much, Kia ora. That was just a fantastic presentation. We do appreciate it. And I've just got a really important question. With the Māori ward that you have now and your 3 Māori councillors, I asked the question earlier of some of the appellants whether they felt that because of your high number of Māori within Flaxmere, that in fact the interests, I've often heard it said that that what's good for Māori is good for everyone.
Yes.
And I just wondered if in fact, has Flaxmere's representation improved with 3 Māori members now in the Māori ward?
I think most certainly. Like I said, as previously mentioned before, because of the involvement of these extra kanohi, these extra māngai, like I said, they're starting to change, I guess, the narrative around us becoming a community and turning it into a whānau aspect. So the narrative around that, I think, is definitely happening because of that. Yes, we're not the perfect community, not any community is perfect, but when things are going kei te he, if anything is going wrong, due to, of course, our māngai, our new wards, our new councillors talking, we respond back and try and assist them in ways that we can. And it's been through, of course, the power of this technology as well. So, I hope that answers your question, Ehua.
Thank you.
Commissioner Piper, are you good?
I'm all good. Kia ora, Crystal. That was very helpful.
Crystal, I think we've got the message pretty clearly. And just from the Commission's perspective, just acknowledge the extraordinary effort on a voluntary basis. Clearly, you're contributing into your community. You're to be applauded.
Kia ora, tēnā koe. Thank you.
Kia ora. Right, now, Penny, I think that we just got Nick to go.
Yes, that's right. And I think Nick is here and we should be able to bring her into the meeting just now. I'll work on that.
And Commissioners, page 59.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Nicola.
Unfortunately, I don't have a video, so you only get to hear me
No,
at this
that's
time.
no problem. That's no problem. You've got a bit of a sense around how this is working?
To a degree, I've been in and out a bit because I'm actually currently working, which is actually one of the points I want to make in regards to this proposal, was that oftentimes lower income families don't have as good a representation, or as who was it, John put it, politically disengaged. And one of the reasons for that is we're too busy working to feed our families, to write for proposals or prepare or research, to make a nice speech here. And bringing that back to myself, I've done the same, where I haven't done a lot of research or prepared much because I'm too busy putting food on the table.
Fair enough. Look, we respect that, Nicola. The opportunity that the Commission provided was to try and get a variety of perspectives from individuals in your community. And I think we've achieved that actually exceptionally well today, with the spread of individuals who have made themselves available, all volunteers, all trying to do their best for what's important to them. So completely and absolutely respect that you are working as you've articulated. Just to check in though, do you have any specific observations you'd like to make in relation to the representation?
I do have a few notes I want to make.
Sure.
But first of all, I really just want to check in with your panelists there. If you have any reasons or concerns currently as to why you wouldn't accept the proposal.
Well, technically, the reason that we are here today is because the proposal is outside the boundaries by which local authorities are obligated in terms of the plus or minus 10%.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the reason for it. I'm just wondering if, like, at this point in time, you have any more reasons or concerns as to, not accepting the current proposal.
We'll deliberate once we've heard from everybody, which will be within the next hour, and then we will independently resolve our level of support or not for what it is that the council has proposed.
Okay, no, just mainly, like, I don't want to be going over the same things that everyone else has gone over. If you've already heard those and agreed to those. So I was just, wondering if there's any specific points I should be speaking to more that you haven't heard about.
I suggest you tell us exactly what you think, and then we can have that recorded.
Okay, so I've just made some brief notes.
Sure.
The main thing that I want to go about is that yeah, I mean, I definitely think we, Flaxmere, I live in Flaxmere, and I believe we could do with more representation. I do note that political disengagement, blah, blah, blah. What do I have? No, it's all just jumbled. I was going to speak to a specific point that was brought up earlier in regards to how things are different in different places. I did a playground survey when the council put through a promotion to go around to all the playgrounds in different areas of the council land, and won a competition regarding that. And we went to all the playgrounds and we rated them and made notes on them, and just the differences in the playgrounds between Havelock North and Flaxmere. I know that some improvements have been made, especially recently in Flaxmere with the big playground there and the addition of the basketball courts. And I know that they're planning to improve, is it the Ron Griorgi Park? Messina Reserve in Havelock North is one that I think is a great example to compare to Kingsley Park. And it makes notes of the people in the area of Havelock at Messina Reserve. That playground is dead all the time. Nobody very often uses it. I suspect there's not many children in the area, and those children come from higher income families who have their own play equipment, or they get shuffled around to different after school activities. Whereas Kingsley Park, which is near me, has lots of children around it, and it's got one old slide and a couple of swings and a seesaw. So that was just one example that I note John couldn't think of earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to do a little bit of research regarding representation. I couldn't find a lot in what I was trying to look for, but I found some studies based from the US that the working class makes up approximately 50% of the population, but only 10% of city council representation. So yeah, I'm all for more representation for Flaxmere, and I'm running out of time, so just any questions, I guess.
You're right, Nicola. Don't stress. There are questions. Commissioner Piper has a question.
Yep.
Kia ora, Nick. Thank you for your submission. A location question and then a more substantive question. Where is the Messina Reserve in Havelock North?
Have a Google. Sorry.
Have a Google.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'll do that. No, sensible answer. Yeah, cool. Because if you don't know the name of the street, how you can't tell me.
MEISSNER is how it's spelled.
Yeah. Okay. Let's cut to the chase. As the chair said, as Brendan said, that we've got some legislative restraints on us in terms of the criteria for representation, and it's about fair representation, that everybody's vote across the district's got some equalness, but also, and there's also, of course, the effective representation, which is the thing that you're addressing. You know, that people have got access to councillors, and councillors have got access to people, to residents. So one of the suggestions, there's been a couple of suggestions made about ways that if the Commission feels unable to
it sticks with the council's proposal that maybe that the commissioners should have a think about establishing a community board, or the council's talking about establishing a standing committee at council.
Well, in my research, I found a Flexmere community plan, which looked quite good. And that was from 2016 to 2019. And I can't see any current update other than they were asking for submissions for a new one in 2001. So that means from 2019 till today, Flexmere's been without a current community plan. And I also would be interested in how many goals and actions from that plan were actually met.
So just for clarity, Nicola, are you aware of a body called the Flexmere Planning Committee?
Not really. I don't have much information regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My other question around all of this would be Havelock and Flexmere, to me, they're quite similar sized populations. And I asked through to the council regarding in relation to this, and I believe I couldn't get an answer for how many councillors reside in Havelock North.
That's pretty easy to find out. I would have thought the council could easily give you that information. Do you want to know that, do you?
So I got, they made a decision in 2013 for the Hastings Havelock North Ward because it's not geographically isolated. Do councillors come from anywhere in Hastings or they need specific suburbs? Candidates for council can live anywhere in the district.
Yep.
How many councillors live in Havelock? Under the Act, Havelock is represented by the councillors elected by voters in the Hastings Havelock North Ward. Councillors' place of residence is not considered a determinant of which ward they represent.
Correct.
That's the law.
That's across New Zealand.
Yeah, so I just think that, potentially many of the councillors currently sitting could be from Havelock North. And how is that fair? If that is the case.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that observation. Are there any other questions from commissioners? I think we're done.
Thank you, Nick. That was helpful.
So thank you for the observations that you've made. I know it's terribly challenging when you're in the middle of your working day as well, but we do appreciate you've made time available. Do apologise for the delay in getting you on.
Yeah, that's
terribly challenging keeping everybody to time, but I think we've given everybody a fair go.
Cool.
Cheers, Nicola.
Okay, thank you.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.
Okay. That has concluded all of the presentations that were booked in, and I'm just looking at the clock and trying to decide what we should do now. I think let's agree that by 1 o'clock we're going to have a break. So I just want to check in with commissioners to see if there's anything we need to place in front of you, Mayor Sandra, before we take a break. And my head says that we should stop at 1. We should take a realistic break, which could be half an hour, 3/4 an hour, or an hour, doesn't matter, whatever you guys feel most comfortable with. Come back for the right of reply, and then we can carry on to whatever's next on our agendas.
We've still got questions for council. We haven't had a chance to.
And that's what I want to do now.
Okay, but
so I'm saying between now and ideally 1 o'clock, if we can.
Look, I'm sure that my questions are going to take 10 minutes, and Janie's even cleverer than I am. So
you go first, Sue, with questions, and we'll see where we land.
Well, but Janie, interrupt me when you want to talk about that subject as well, will you, please? Oh, well, I didn't expect that answer, to be honest.
What?
Well, my first question goes to just the community, the community board. You've got the rural community board. What and we've looked at the delegation, so we see they've got, as you said, delegation authorities. What's their status at the council table?
Well, I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to answer that, as both the Deputy Mayor and a Rural Community Board member.
Kia ora everybody, and it's lovely to see faces I've recognised having been in front of this Local Government Commission. I think this might be my 4th time. Our community board, you quite possibly have heard the history, came through the Rural Revolt. And in the 20 years that I've been involved, firstly as a community board member, then chair, then a rural councillor appointed to the community board, and that's the role that I hold there now. I'm only aware of one recommendation, and that was before my time, that the council has not ratified. So that means all of the recommendations that the community board puts through are very robust, and they are supported and approved by council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, but my question was, and maybe it was a bit obscure, what is the status of the community board at the council table? That is it a right to sit at the table in any form, committees or whatever? That was my question.
Okay, my apologies. We have at the council table the 2 rural councillors that also sit on the Rural Community Board. So the community board itself does not sit at the council table.
Oh, that's good.
But each of the subcommittees has community board members appointed to it.
That is the council subcommittees, like the work
Eco districts.
Yes.
Yeah. Greater community.
Is that the standing committees or just subcommittees?
Just the subcommittees.
Okay, cool. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Fantastic. Thank you. Question, just starting off. Let's go. I was just trying to get my head together, so I think I'm heading the right direction now. There's this discussion in your papers where you made the decision, Mayor, that an observation was made that the Māori ward members, the Māori councillors, Māori ward councillors, would be able to represent Blacksmere community. Can you just discuss that a bit further? And in particular, I'm interested in sort of how, really, but also what the implications are for those who probably don't live in Pātoka or don't live down out south of Waimarama or you know, on the edges of the district. So you said, look, one general councillor will work because, this is my interpretation, because there's going to be 3 Māori councillors, Māori ward councillors, who will, in the end, be able to represent Blacksmere. Can you just talk about that a bit more?
So really, Blacksmere makes up a third of the Takitimu new Māori ward. So that's the Māori population, and it's a third of our Māori community is based there. So that's why we said that, you know, there'll be great support for the Blacksmere community because of the large Māori population from.
Well, let's put up a couple of that's a thought. Let's put up. Let's say that none of the 3 Māori councillors are resident in Blacksmere.
So it's
not, you can't guarantee it, can you?
No, exactly. And so, but 3 could be, you know, 3 could be coming from Blacksmere. So I mean, you know, while it's tricky to say that, but what we did listen to is Ngāti Kahungunu very carefully and very strategically said that they wanted to have a Takitimu Māori ward with 3 councillors from the wider district, and they would support Māori interests, and Māori interests also in Blacksmere community.
But they represent Māori citizens, not tangata whenua.
Yeah, so I'll just get Ross to add to that from the submissions.
So I think the council's through you, Your Worship. I think the council, when it was looking at this, was looking that a third of the electoral population for that ward comes from Blacksmere. That councillors will be naturally incentivised to represent and work for Flaxmere because of that. It's just like the government works for Auckland because Auckland makes up 1/3 of the national population. And I think there was also discussion around the fact that the work of the council was really quite place-based and place-focused in a lot of ways. So while there will be things that having a Māori perspective on, a strengthened Māori perspective is absolutely positive and essential, a lot of the day-to-day work that councillors are doing relates to place-based issues. And with Flaxmere making up 1/3 of that electoral population, that really will incentivise those councillors to represent the Flaxmere ward.
So I'm living in Hastings. And I'm on the Māori electoral roll, and all the councillors come from Flaxmere. How? Don't forget, there's a fair representation issue in here as well. What about the rest? 1/3 live in Flaxmere, but 2/3 don't.
One of the current city councillors doesn't live in Flaxmere.
Well, maybe you could. Maybe best to address it in the right of reply, because I.
Yeah, let's do that.
And the other thing is that did you, notwithstanding Kahununu, given the fair representation criteria, did you have a look at what the implications would be of having more than one ward in terms of the 10% rule? That'd be helpful. Janie, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
So just so Mayor Sandra, just park that up for right of reply, and we'll allow plenty of time, obviously.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Annie, have you got?
I just for the right of reply, if the council could just address, they've resolved to investigate the Flaxmere Standing Committee or subcommittee. Can you update us on how you're getting on with that? Is it likely to endure past the 2022 election? And that's probably my, that's the only thing I need addressed at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple more questions for the right of reply, Brendan, if I may.
Please, Sue. Yeah.
How, again, this issue of representing at the table, how the Flaxmere General Ward, a single councillor from Flaxmere, and let's just say there is only one Flaxmere resident or business. Obviously, they don't have to live there to be representing the ward. How do you think that they can effectively represent the ward compared to councillors from other wards with a, on average, fewer number of people that they are representing in terms of the fair representation issue? Maybe you could discuss that a bit in your right reply. And given 400 new dwellings in Flaxmere, what's the population growth going to be like over the next 5 years for Flaxmere and, in fact, for the urban area Havelock North Hastings?
Okay.
And so there's some implications there. And oh damn, there's another idea that went into me. I think is there anything you want to add to what the Flaxmere Planning Committee said about the relationship with the council? That's if you want to. And
so don't worry, Sue. Just while you, I'll just interrupt while you're thinking, unless you've got it. Have you got it?
Well, I guess, yes, I have. I've just come back to me, and it is the last thing, and it goes back again to this issue of the Māori ward. And given that the voting percentages in Flaxmere is very low compared to the rest of the district, again, I want you to just sit and go through this issue, this hope, that your hope or your expectation that at least one of the Māori ward councillors will be from Flaxmere, because another reason why that might not happen is the low voting turnout. So and so I'd be pleased if you would address that issue. And I'm going to stop now.
Okay, no, that's fine.
6 people stood for Flaxmere.
And please, I'm not trying to rush it. So
I understand that, but I think I've in terms of the questions that are this is very
okay. So I'll just try and round it out. Clearly, the discussion relating to the Flaxmere Planning Committee, so this is for the right of reply, is to help the Commission to understand more deeply the history and from the Council's perspective, the significance of that body or not. I just want to get my head around that. And then should the Commission see to support the proposition of one representative, how does the Commission be confident that a body such as the Flaxmere Planning Committee would be able to be sustained, nurtured and grow and add the values that the community are looking for? I think that's the guts of where we're sitting at the minute, and would be really, really keen to hear back in the right of reply about what the council's intent is, understanding of course that in October there's a new council. Where are the ties to ensure, I suppose, is what we're looking for. Have I captured that, Janie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wonder if you could just have a little, just a wee expose on the kind of discussions you had when you were weighing up whether you should have a community board for Flaxmere as well. So what are the advantages in your mind? What are the disadvantages? Why did you decide not to do that? Thank you.
Okay, so Tanya, you've got your hand up, is that?
Clarification.
Oh, clarification.
Commissioner Piper, I apologise, I was incorrect. Nick Dawson, the chairman of our Rural Community Board, does sit on the 2 standing committees of council. So my apologies.
Thanks, Tanya. No, that's all fine. Rightio, we need a break. Just bear with me, use the technology so I can find everybody. Rightio, we need a break. My sense that by the time we go away and have a bit of a chat and what have you, is an hour okay, or is that too long? Do you want to come back in half an hour? So Mayor Sandra, within your team, what do you got? We've got to have a decent, break, but I don't want to ruin your afternoon diaries and what have you. Mayor Sandra, what are you guys thinking?
An hour's good, Brendan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Rightio.
Yeah.
So let's reconvene at 2. We'll adjourn and reconvene at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Well done, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rightio, Penny, we just click out. We don't click out. We turn off, mute, and
Put yourselves on mute, turn your video off. I'll put up the slide saying that we're having a break, and then I'll start the teleconference. Shall I?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Great.
please.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Commissioners get that? I hope they did.
Well, I can sort that out. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I got it.
Teleconference. Yep.
By the pound or hash sign. Sorry, you may have entered an invalid conference code or dialed an incorrect number. Please verify and try again. Welcome to the meeting. Please enter your conference code followed by the pound or hash sign.
What is the code?
Sorry, you may have entered an invalid conference code or dialed an incorrect number.
Somebody's still got their microphone on. I can hear you dialing in.
I've dialed in. I'm just waiting to come in.
Can I just ask, what
Yeah.
is the code? Because I haven't got it for some reason on my phone.
So do you want the start? You got the 0800 633
Yeah,
866.
got that. Got that.
326 991 hash.
So 326 991 hash. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Brendan and Janie, you've got your microphones on.
Please enter your conference.
Penny, as the person driving this webinar,
yes,
I have a wedding to go to this afternoon at 3 o'clock, hence I've got my glad rags on. I may need to leave before this is completed. So if I do, my apologies, but if the commissioners have any questions specifically of me, they could be early.
So I imagine that Brendan probably heard that, but we can look into that. The other thing is as well, if you do have to, when you do have to go, if there are any questions that come out after the fact, we can always get hold of you and sort that out. We don't have to necessarily have had absolutely every question answered by the time we finish today, because the commissioners have a period of time to deliberate past that point.
Thank you very much.
What's the time?
It was an hour from 1:04, of course.
Right, back in. I just needed to get diligent to go live again.
Brendan, I'm not sure if you heard Tanya was just saying she needs to go at 3.
Yes, I did, Tanya. Look, I think we'll be pretty good. Ideally, now the council will give the right of reply, and we should be pretty well done, I think. But you bail out when you need to go. There's no drama there. Janie, you've got to get away at some stage as well, don't you?
Well, I'd love to finish this by 3 too, because of a couple of other things I need to do this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will. Janie, you're on mute.
I see the council needs another 5 minutes.
And to clarify, the wedding is at 3 and it takes half an hour to get there.
Oh, sorry.
We've already driven the first 3 hours. We're just at the motel half an hour away from the wedding.
Oh, very good.
Very, very exciting.
It is exciting. Weddings are always exciting.
Yeah, love a good wedding.
Yep, me too.
Are we live and streaming?
We are.
Yes, always.
Just be aware. Right, so we've got a wee delay, and we'll just wait until the council come on.
If I can make a comment, I loved the community people that spoke today with such passion about their community. It was really impressive.
We're all good when you are, Mayor Sandra.
Oh, there we are. Well, here we are. Kia ora koutou katoa. Great to see you back. Our right of reply, and we, had a, and as Deputy Mayor said, it's always good to hear our community, which we know their concerns, and right through this whole process actually. So there wasn't anything really new to us, but it's just how to manage the next stage of the process for us. That's what the most important part is for you. So thank you for the opportunity to respond, and I'm going to answer the questions from the commissioners and then close with a final observation. So did the council look at what the implication would be of having more than one Māori ward in terms of the plus and minus 10% rule? Yes, council looked at the options for multiple Māori wards, including the option of Pāhara Keke, Flaxmere, Māori ward, and a ward for the balance of the district. That option was compliant with the plus and minus 10%. However, we note, as you will, that the plus and minus 10% requirement applies separately to the Māori wards and the general wards. That is, such an option does nothing to address the mathematical representation in the Flaxmere general ward, even though it provides another Flaxmere specific councillor. The council didn't pursue a separate Māori ward for Flaxmere, as the strong feedback from the Māori community was that one ward across the district, Takatimu, was preferred. With regard to the council's resolution to investigate a Flaxmere standing or subcommittee, how's that progressing, and is it likely to endure past the 2022 election? Work to implement council's resolution has commenced. This has included the first round of engagement with the Flaxmere Planning Committee to seek their responses to council's resolution and their ideas. As part of this engagement, the Flaxmere Planning Committee has emphasised the value of maintaining the Flaxmere Planning Committee's independence. There is also independence and engagement with council. Further discussion with the Planning Committee is planned, and a workshop and report to council will occur over the next 2 months. Council is keen to consider the options that emerge from that consultation. Council has a history of retaining initiatives that prove to be successful. Council is also currently working on a governance review of suggestions for the incoming council, which could be a subcommittee for Flaxmere Pāhara Keke. It could be an appointed subcommittee, and that suggestion from full council will go to the new council and after the 2022 elections. How would a single councillor from the Flaxmere General Ward effectively represent the ward compared to councillors from other wards with an average of fewer people to represent? We think a single councillor can represent the views of the Flaxmere Ward effectively, particularly with the representation model we are proposing. In support of that view, firstly, I don't think the representation numbers between Flaxmere and other wards are markedly different when compared with other underrepresentation margins apparent around the country. The 7 councillors proposed for Hastings Havelock North Ward will also represent, on average, over 6,000 people per councillor. Secondly, the place-based nature of most of council work means that there will be 3 Māori ward councillors with a formal representation role for Flaxmere and an electoral incentive to work effectively for the area. Alongside the Flaxmere ward councillor, councillors do not have to live in an area to be incentivised to do the work that it represents. I note that both the current Flaxmere councillors live outside the Flaxmere ward. Thirdly, if we opted for option B with 1 councillor out of 14, there would still be 1 councillor for the identical number of people, but we would be mathematically compliant. There would be no practical difference. The councillor will provide a distinct voice for the Flaxmere at the council table. One of the options could be for the new council that a Māori ward councillor could be appointed as a Flaxmere champion to support the elected councillor. What is the population growth likely to be in Flaxmere relative to other areas in the district? Flaxmere is projected to grow by approximately 800 households over the next 10 years. However, that growth occurs in the context of a projected 7,000 households over that same period across the district. And can I just point out the significant amount of investment from both the Crown, the private sector, the council and iwi over the next few years is in the circa of $200 million. And so to have a direct subcommittee to manage that work through council could be an option. What is the population growth likely to be in Flaxmere relative to other areas? Oh, I've done that one. Oh, where am I? Oh, number 5. Number 5, is there anything to add what the Flaxmere Planning Committee said about their relationship with council? You know, council has a strong relationship with the committee, as has been portrayed, but it relies on people putting their hands up to be on a planning committee, just as we have, and that committee currently looks after the Flaxmere Community Plan. They look after events, upgrades to parks and various other important roles that their community wants brought forward through their community plan. And their plan is in the process at the moment of going through, bringing it up to the next 3 years, as you heard today. Number 6, given the voting percentages in Flaxmere are very low compared to the rest of the district, can you comment further on your hope that at least one of the Māori ward councillors might be from Flaxmere? We don't have a hope that one of the members will be from Flaxmere. While we think that it is likely, we think that with a 1/3 of the population being from a population from Flaxmere will motivate a strong place-based representation for Flaxmere. Please provide more detail on the history of the Flaxmere Planning Committee and give the council's perspective on the significance of that body or not. The Flaxmere Planning Committee is regarded as very significant by council. We are consulting with it as we consider a Flaxmere committee as part of a council structure. Number 8. In an arrangement with one councillor for the Flaxmere General Ward, how can the Commission be confident that bodies such as the Flaxmere Planning Committee would be able to be supported, sustained and nurtured? The Council has a strong track record of working with the Committee over successive councils, and there is no reason that this should not continue. What did the Council discuss in terms of the pros and cons of establishing a community board for Flaxmere? The Flaxmere councillors were not in favour of community board. There was a preference for an appointed committee that would reflect the diversity in Flaxmere. Given the lack of the community demand for a board, it was felt that it would be better to hear from the community on the issue before imposing a board. Closing comment. The underrepresentation of Flaxmere is clearly a key issue for the Commission, and we've heard some of the calls for Flaxmere to retain 2 councillors. Countering that, there were some submitters satisfied with the proposal. The council could not justify 2 councillors for Flaxmere. That would create a very significant overrepresentation and would throw other representation ratios out further. Option B that the council considered was compliant for Flaxmere with only 1 councillor. However, it threw the other wards out of compliance. The Commission is looking at the same map and ward structure and population estimates as we are. Council could not come up with a better balance than it has. We believe Flaxmere will receive effective representation, particularly given the introduction of Māori wards. We believe the Council's proposal should be confirmed. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Sandra. Mayor Sandra, thank you. I just want to check in with commissioners if there's anything else that you feel you need or wish to nudge at all. I just want to go, if you don't mind, Mayor Sandra, can you go back to question 7 and just can you just articulate that answer again? I just wanted to make sure I got it right. So the question 7 was around.
Please provide more detail on the history of the Flaxmere Planning Committee.
Yeah. And what was your answer?
The Flaxmere Planning Committee is regarded as very significant by council. But I might add, it relies on volunteers. It relies on people to put their hand up, as we heard today, through different submissions. We are consulting with it to consider a Flaxmere committee as part of the council structure for the new council.
Right. So on that particular point,
Yes.
have you commenced the consultation with them, or are you thinking about doing it?
Yes.
Had the initial meetings with them.
Sorry?
The first round of engagement has happened, but there is to be another round.
Okay. Do you think they understand what it is that you're anticipating you want them to do? The reason I asked the question, I haven't heard anything from them about it.
The engagement.
Well, I think I wasn't a party to those first engagements, but I think they do understand. I think they signalled that they wish to retain their independence in their role. That's not to say that people that aren't on that committee may not end up on a council committee as part of the council structure.
Who engage with them? Who engage with them?
Engage with them.
Staff from the community area of council in the first instance, and democracy area.
So are the electeds aware that that's happening, Sandra?
Yeah, what's a resolution of council to do that? So.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Okay, are we good, commissioners? Yeah. Okay. Right. Yes, we are. Right. So we will determine now that we have concluded the procedural process. And I do want to make a couple of acknowledgements. I can't see the full screen, but is James still there? He is? No. Fantastic. Okay, fantastic. First of all, Nigel, I just want to acknowledge your letter of the 29th of November, which was summarising the decision. The acknowledgement that I think is really, really appropriate to make is to your team for the huge amount of work that's clearly gone into this process. It was a really high standard, and the detail in there I think was brilliant. So I just want to make that acknowledgement on the record from the Commission that the process that we've followed, process that you have followed, I think has been exceptionally well done, and we've just placed that on the record. James, I do want to acknowledge the role that you play. I know you haven't articulated a perspective at all through the day, but I think it just as a courtesy, tangata whenua involvement is clearly crucial and important, and nothing more obvious today than the centre of the discussion. So I just want to make that acknowledgement through to you. I think that's covered off all that which is important, except that we as the Commission do close with a karakia, but I just as a courtesy, James, want to check in with you whether you would like us to close with our karakia, or is it more appropriate, given that you've stayed there for the day, and I think it is more appropriate that you might want to close us out. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, Brendan, and to your fellow commissioners, Janie and Sue, and the team there, Penny and your team, as well as to our Mayor, Sandra, and Tanya, our Deputy Mayor, is still there, and the team here, with our CE. Yes, thank you for the time today, and thank you for the opportunity as well to close this important day, the sui we've had, wānanga with karakia. So without further ado, we will close with karakia nō reira. He hunui, he huro ki te ao. O mai o ki tua, ka rongo ki te tai ao nei. Hara mai te ihi, nau mai te wana. Ko rangi nui e tū nei, ko papa tua nuku e takoto nei. Whanno, hara mai te toki, Haumi e, hui e.
Tā hiki e.
Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora.
James, and thank you, Miss Sandra. Thanks for the
Thank
effort
you,
that's
Brendan.
gone in today. Wish us luck. You know the proceedings from here,
Yes,
and you'll hear from us in
thank
due
you.
course. Appreciate your
Awesome.
hospitality.
Thanks, team. Thank you very much.